Yeah, Rich Waterman here. Hello to you if you're live on this meeting or watching a stream or you're watching the replay that I normally release a couple of days later. Um, Today I want to talk about selling. Last week I talked about leads. If you want to find out more about that, just go through my social media and you'll find all the relevant links. But today I wanted to talk about selling because for me, was quite an emotive subject. Certainly when I first started in business, it wasn't something I didn't necessarily have particularly great connotations with. I didn't like the way that I'd been sold to in the past. But as a business owner, you've got to understand how to sell. Otherwise, you don't have any customers, basically. So in this webinar, I'm going to talk about how I sell. I'm going to talk about my approach to selling and how it's worked for me basically. So for those that are let me just switch this around. Yeah, for those that are come live into this meeting, I'm just going to repost the link to the workbook which I'm going to talk through. It's pretty straightforward. You can always fill it in afterwards as well. um but a couple of things up front really. So I want to ask some permissions from you all. So the first permission is my style is very direct, very quick. I tend to talk quite quickly. That's just the nature of who I am. I will make a replay available, so if you want to go over some of this stuff again, then cool. But I like to get in as much as I possibly can. So I'm going to teach as much as I can about selling in approximately an hour that we're going to have together. Um, it's complete. It's a complete process, Michael. There's a complete process around uh, my selling, and I what I'm going to teach you, you can just go away and use straight away. Yep. Um, it's not. I don't. I've never been in the business when I teach stuff that I will teach something that's incomplete. And oh, you got to follow me. You got to follow me more if you want to get the full picture. I just don't do that sort of stuff. It's just not a good way of doing things. Um, so I'll talk quickly. I'll talk complete. It's part of a bigger ecosystem, which I'll talk about in a second. Um, and then at the end, I'll talk about ways you can work with me if you want to. Right? It's not a heavy sell. In fact, I never sell anything on a webinar. It's just an invitation. If you want to go and explore more, you can do so. Okay. So without further ado, let me kick into the content, which involves me doing a bit of tech. So let's see if I can get this right. So I'm going to share my iPad and do that. Da da da. Whoop. Here we go. It's always great. You practice it for beforehand, and then you sit there for a few minutes trying to make it work. Let me just try again. Okay, here we go. It's working on the PC. It's just got to get my iPad to wake up. If not, I'm just going to start talking, and eventually it will kick in. Oh, come on, you little beggar. Always a way in it. Let me just try one more time. No, I'll just talk. Okay, that's working. That's working. We could be in business. It's not deliberate suspense. Trust me. I think I've just got super slow internet. There we go. Okay, service-based selling. So for me, uh, it was a solution to a massive problem I had basically, which was I just hated the concept of sales. I hated the way that people sold to me. I realized I had to do it and I had to find a way to make it work. So it's kind of like gathering pieces from different people and then finding out what worked for me and what didn't. But fundamentally, actually, it's focusing on serving the client and having high quality conversations with your client and actually understanding what they need and seeing if what you offer fits in with that. Yeah, it's not rocket science, but it kind of is because it's kind of the biggest hurdle that I see for coaches, mentors, speakers, whatever, actually getting the business they want. And you might even be mildly successful, kind of forcing a way through already. Or sometimes I have very successful people, but they still hate selling. Right. I need to talk to you about how this fits into a bigger ecosystem. So if I talk you through something called it's my genius model. It's not my genius, unfortunately. It's a guy called Simon Bowen in Australia, and he talks about how you can organise your content so that people can understand a bit better about what you do. So sales is a part of how I work with clients, right? So if I take the three big circles first. The first big circle is you as a speaker, you as a client. Okay. The second big circle is your community. So those are the people that you interact with. Um, that can be clients in that community, but also it's a lot of people that haven't become a client yet. And then the final piece is your work. So like that's basically what are you delivering, um, which which we'll come to in a second. It's very important for sales. You need to kind of know where it's going. Now there's some three subsections to this. So as I talk around this, just write down how you would score yourself. So you could go, I use traffic light system normally, which is it's really good. It's okay, or I need to look at this pronto. So really good would be green light, okay is an orange light, red is a I'm not so good. Okay, so things you can score yourself on. Let me just change the color. So the you thing is like, what's your relationship with your past? In other words, do you use all your resources? Do you use your experience? Have you got fond memories? Do you tell yourself great stories of clients you've worked with, great experiences you had, or are there some things that you still got guilt, shame, or regret about? So your past, score yourself on that. Okay, good, okay, not so good, right? Present. I'm going to talk about presence in a second for selling because present is very, very important in terms of your emotional state for selling effectively. And I think the game of life, fundamentally, the way I measure my life is how present am I? How present am I for how long? What's the depth of my presence? What's the impact of my presence? So actually, for me, I'm gonna go around all these circles, but actually, one of my primary measures of how good my life is how present I am. Um, and will I explain more why it's particularly important for sales, right? So mark yourself for presence, and then future. I always work with clients who are coaches, speakers, or mentors, whatever, on creating a compelling future as well. A future you're excited about, um, one that's aligned with who you are, one that doesn't have a lot of anxiety and worry in it. So again, mark yourself for future as well. Okay, very important to work on yourself as a speaker, coach, or mentor. Then it comes to your community, and I think it's really important in your community to be able to express your why and your purpose. So again, score yourself in terms of how well connected are you to that. That's actually a very important part of selling, is how enthusiastic and how aligned you are with your purpose, and how are you expressing it. So score yourself for that. How well are you connecting with kind of what I call your tribe? In other words, people that resonate with your stuff. Like how well are you connecting? Are you really expressing conviction about what's important to you and your work, or are you maybe not putting stuff out there, or maybe are you a little bit bland? So what's your level of connection with your community? Score yourself on that. Now, last week I talked about leads. This week I'm going to talk about sales. You need to generate both to have a successful business. So you might want to score on both parts actually. How's your lead generation going? How's your sales going? Okay. Final bit. So I focus on working with people who want to coach and want to speak in various levels. Could be live speeches, could be videos, could be stuff like this. And who want to mentor or consult. You can score that now. I'm actually going to do a slide on this in terms of different models that you can use to deliver your work. But like, how it if you do use all those bits, or if you're thinking about using those bits, how well are they working in your business now? So what I'm going to talk about tonight is I'm going to talk about sales. I'm going to talk about being more present and how you might do that. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about delivery models for all this sort of stuff as well. Okay, because I think talking about sales in isolation doesn't make a lot of sense when you got to think about, okay, what else is it connected to? Okay, when you get this right, this model right, let me switch color. Um, when you and your community of people that you are talking to or connecting with, when you're doing that well, it's authentic. When your community and your work kind of flow between each other really nicely, work is really when you're delivering value to clients and they're paying you for it. That's aligned. And then when you and your work is aligned, in other words, how you're delivering value and how you're getting paid for it aligns with who you are as a person, it's called probably flow or it's effortless. Okay. The reason I end up working with people is because there's disconnect. So between you and your community, the disconnect would probably look like feeling a bit incongruent. If there's disconnect between your community and your work, funny enough, I actually call that disconnect. There's not a flow between what you're putting out there to in terms of content or whatever it is, and actually the work you're doing. And the real dangerous one is if where there's disconnect, if you're actually getting in clients, but your delivery system doesn't really work very well, there's often a risk of burnout. So I often see people present to me with like actually they've got reasonably successful businesses or sometimes very successful businesses, but they feel incongruent, they feel like not expressing themselves, they feel there's a disconnect between what they're putting out there and what their work actually looks like, and they're experiencing various levels of stress or burnout. Okay. So yeah, just score yourselves on those areas and let's talk about three of them and see how that impacts on sales. So I would say that most coaches, when, for example, because I've done a lot of work obviously with coaches over the years, most coaches um, don't think about their emotional state when going into a sales call. So for me, I won this today actually, which was successful, which is lovely. Um, all I was thinking about was being present. How can I be present? Because when I'm present, I'm actually listening to the potential client. I'm actually looking to understand what's going on in their world. And then I'm even considering genuinely is what I do, is that aligned with what they need? Okay. And even if it is, I still have to have the relative level of unattachment in terms of will they buy or not? It's not actually my decision, right? I can say, yeah, I think it's going to be great, and here's the potential investment for you. And they might say no for various reasons, or they might not say not yet for various reasons. Okay. So I always focus on being present before a call, and often it is. I ask you in the workbook. I've said, look, you can fill out three different ways that you have for being present. So, for example, mine might be, I might go for a walk in nature. I might really focus on my breathing. I might actually just sit there and just think about the client and try and get into their world and think about what they need ahead of the call. Because I've like had a call previously. I might to focus on hydration and breathing, right? So it might be different for you. Like what brings you into present? It might be the way that you look at it is what gets me out of thinking in the past or the future, because actually often that's a big part of it is if I can not be worrying or anxious about the future, or if I can not be dwelling on the past, doing not in both of those actually often will bring you into the present moment. Okay. So write down what your three ways are for you. If you want to share them in the chat or if you're watching it on a replay, just let me know what they are for you. That'd be really useful actually. And also how well you score yourself on presence. I think that's important, right? Something you can measure. Okay. I won't dwell on that any longer than that, but I very deliberately go into presence when I'm on a call. I learned it actually from a guy. One of my mentors is a guy called Taki Moore, Taki Moore, Moore. He's actually I probably witnessed the best group selling by him that I've ever seen. And he was just totally present, and he was um, seemingly unattached to the sale. He just wanted to make sure he could serve you, and if it was right for you, then great, go and sign up. And it was actually a sale in a group setting. Brilliant, really good. Felt really. I felt honoured. I felt respected. I felt like someone was genuinely interested in my success, not his bank balance. A big shout out to Taki Moore, Takimoore. Next page. So there's kind of like this emotional state beforehand, and then there's you got to know what you're selling into, right? So there's different models. We'll talk about a bit about them last week as well. So you've got four different models, I think, for how your work might look. And speaker models are a little bit different. I'll probably do a separate session on speaking because it's a kind of its own beast, really. But certainly coaching, mentoring, consultancy, you've got options of kind of doing one-to-one work, which I think is a great place to start because you can start to find out, what is it you're coaching or mentoring people on, what sort of common themes are there, as a certain particular type of person you like to work with. It can be a bit more flexible, right? Then you might start to, actually there's groups of people who either are a certain demographic or psychographic, in other words, they think in a certain way, or they've got similar sets of problems, or they've got similar sets of aspirations. I think after some one-to-one work, you might find there's groups of people who you can offer a group program which I think in many ways actually is more powerful because actually they then get to interact with each other and help each other, and it's a peer thing. Because often with speakers, coaches, and mentors, etc., it can be quite a lonely world. So actually giving someone a group program can be quite a nice thing to be part of. I think then from that, when you're helping people in a group scenario, you might start to develop some programs which kind of more self-led things. Here's something you can go through to help you increase your sales, or here's something you can go through to create more leads, or here's a coaching business program like me and my cousin Chris Joseph produced called TS Box, Business Coaching. You start to develop programs, or there's kind of a hybrid model which is often combinations of all three. So the masterminds that I run are there's a self-led program which they can go through. There's group calls they can go through, and often, depending on what the offer is, often I'll do some one-to-one help as well, just to kind of help move people forward a little bit. Or I bring in an expert who offers some one-to-one coaching, say on branding or something like that. Okay. But my experience with selling, so first of all, like if you've got some of these, just rank how well do you think you're doing with that sort of that offer, that delivery piece. With one-to-one, I tend to offer, different levels, different lengths of time, or actually different amounts of sessions, like 12, 24, 48 sessions, increasingly becoming cheaper per session if they commit to longer sessions. I always used to say that you'd normally sell one-to-one coaching, one-to-one, but actually I've now got experience of getting a group of people together and selling one-to-one to a group. So it can actually work both ways, right? Usually you'd sell one-to-one in a one-to-one setting. Group, I would generally find if you're selling a group program, it often works better to sell to a group, because people are getting that group experience and they start to think, actually, do you know what? If I hang out with other people like this, that would actually make a lot of sense, right? Programs, usually that's a lower price point, not always, but usually it's lower price point. So generally, you're going to be selling to groups, just makes it more sense, more makes it from an economic point of view and a time point of view for you. Makes sense. And hybrid depends where the pricing of the model is, but it could be a mixture of one-to-one selling and group, right? So just consider that. So having clarity on what your offers are, and being very clear on, based on your situation, I think this is best for you. I think that's a very useful skill to have with your coach, speaker, or mentor, in terms of, rather than necessarily giving this huge menu of choice, just say, look, based on what you told me, I actually think this probably is the right thing for you. There are other things you want to talk about it, but I like that level of certainty of you are helping someone make a decision by guiding them towards which of your services or products you think makes most sense for them. Yeah. So getting clarity on that is very important. So I think it's important to rate yourself. Like how well are you doing on clarity of offer? Right. The main event. We're going to take here to talk about sales. So a bit of background. I don't read slides. I just don't like doing that. So I'm not going to read these slides either. But I talked before about traditional sales techniques. It just makes me want to puke, to be honest. It's just horrific. Pushy, transaction led, helping the bottom line, the person that's selling, don't really give a stuff about you until you say yes. Then they might show some level of care. Sometimes they don't. Um, and so a lot of people then go, well, I just don't like sales. I don't like selling. It's horrible. But I think you have to then consider it in a different way, because the danger is if you get turned off by traditional selling, which I think is just vile, then the other extreme is you're just way too passive and don't offer any of your stuff. And the problem with that is you might have someone that's actually got an urgent need to solve something, or urgent need to create something, something they may have been frustrated about for a long time. And if you don't offer what you have and give them a choice, because that's ultimately what it is, would you like this thing or not? The likelihood is you won't meet their need, and they'll probably go off and buy something off someone that actually does not have the morals and value that you have. So actually, you've let them down almost as badly as being pushy. Okay. So I very much believe in conversational sales. I very much believe in not leaving people in the maybe space, because maybe generally means that people will just drift through and end up not changing. So you haven't served them in that way. Really focus on serving the client. And certainly when you've made your offer in terms of what their potential investment is, my firm belief is silence is golden. In other words, allow people to process, allow people to think about what this might mean for them. You do not need to talk through the sale. In fact, I would strongly recommend that you don't talk. Just let that person have their space, decide what they want to do. Because if you talk through a sale too much, then you're kind of almost trying to justify what you're offering, and that's a big mistake. Right. Okay. Cool. So I just think there's a zone, right? So if you want to do it live, or if you want to use the workbook, I would imagine most people on this call or looking at this replay, in terms of their own selling, are probably, if they're going to veer towards one end or the other, they're generally going to veer towards being too passive. So not creating enough urgency for the client. Client stays where they are. There ends up being no transaction, or even worse, the client ends up buying off someone that is just not as service orientated as you are. So you might want to make some notes there, kind of in this area here, about times where you've done that, or times where you haven't served someone by not actually helping the client to uncover their own urgency. You're not creating the urgency for them. You're actually tapping into, why is this something they want to solve now? Why do they want to start creating this thing now? Yeah. Or how frustrated they've been over the last few years. You might want to record examples, probably more likely where you've been the victim of it, of too pushy stuff. So you can have almost like a Bible of reminders not to be too passive, but also like, this is stuff that I don't like around sales where people have been pushy towards me. So you can make notes in terms of, this is something that I'm always going to avoid, and actually I'm going to spell it out for the client. I'm not going to push something on you. If there's not a clear need for you to have my service, then it's going to be a no from me as the coach, speaker, mentor, whatever. Yeah. So what we're looking for is this green zone where it's what I call really service-based selling. And what's great is you might have examples of that already where sale just went really, really well. Or maybe you've even seen someone else do a sale and you thought that was really great, like I saw Taki Moore speak, right? So make notes about what represents service-based selling for you, where you're truly listening, you're truly serving, you're uncovering what's going on for the client, you're uncovering whatever urgency it is, why now, why they need to work on it now, why me as a coach, or why do they think I might be useful as a coach. So it's really good to capture that process, because while I can give you some foundations about what works for selling, equally I can't tell you exactly how your sales process could be, because you're a unique individual and different to me, right? So you might take some clues from what I did, but you're not necessarily going to sell exactly how I sell, just some core principles. So for me, this was actually one of the biggest things, and I believe actually I made it up for myself, but it's not exactly rocket science. This the biggest shift for me in selling was imagining myself on the same side of the table as a potential client versus being on the opposite side. So it feels like sometimes there's a bit of space, or I'm trying to push something across, or trying to offer something and see if they'll take it. That's more traditional selling. I hate that approach. Whereas I kind of come around the table and imagine myself sitting next to the client saying, okay, well, let me just really understand what's really going on for you, what your needs are, what's your pain, what's the pleasure aspiration you're looking to create. Let me understand what's going on, reflect it back to the client, and then consider, okay, I feel like I could be a useful coach for you or mentor or whatever it is. Here's why. Or, based on everything you said, actually, I think I'm better off referring you to someone else that I know, because I think they'd be a better fit for you, a better solution. And that pays off big time in the long run. Like, it's just creating goodwill. People appreciate, the service you've given them, particularly if say to them, you're not quite right. And equally, it might be that they've got a problem that you absolutely can solve, but you maybe think the personality fit isn't quite there. And so just be graceful with it and say, look, I think I could help you solve this problem, but I think actually there's someone from a personality or work style perspective would be better for you. Just elegantly refer them on to someone else. Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. Big slide, right? I'm not going to read through it in detail. I don't do reading out slides. I could have had these appearing as bullet points, but whatever. Um, six different steps to this. So really understanding what's going on for the client, what their pain is, what their aspirations are, make notes, reflect back, check for clarity, check that you've understood their where they're at correctly, because sometimes we can make assumptions. The biggest mistake, and this relates to points 2 and 3. The biggest mistake that I made when I started out in coaching was I'd get someone on a call and I'd be focused on fixing problems. Whereas I think coaching in particular is fixing problems is a tiny part of it. I'm much more bigger now in coaching in aspirational stuff, possibility creation. And then if problems come up that are holding them back from getting there, then we might deal with them, or we might just accept the fact they're actually made up. And so we don't need to deal with them. It's just another coaching philosophy piece. But the challenge that I had was when I would get someone in front of me, they present a problem. I'm actually a bloody good coach and I work really quickly. So I would solve that problem for them in the session and they go, "Oh, that's great." And I'd say, "How do you feel?" "Great." "Okay, can I talk about my coaching?" "Of course you can, because like you just solved my problem, so thank you very much." I'd explain what my coaching was about, and they go, "Oh, that's brilliant. Like, if I ever have another problem again, or if I know anyone else has got a problem, I'll definitely refer them to you." So they weren't buying because they were satiated. They were like, "I'm done. I'm complete. You fixed my problem. I don't feel I need anything else at the moment." So this is where you need to be careful about, particularly with coaching or even mentoring, to be fair, is selling to someone that's satiated, selling to someone that feels they've had their problem fixed, which is why generally I don't talk about problems very much in coaching anyway. But if someone does present a problem, if you do feel able to fix it, then fix it for them. And when you fix it for them, say, "Great, now you fixed that problem. What's possible for you? What can you create from this point? What can you now do that you couldn't do before?" Talk about that at length, 5, 10, 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever you need to do, where they get excited about this possibility they didn't have before. And now you say, "Would it be okay if I talk to you about your coaching?" I said, "Because about my coaching, because what I coach people on is creating that possibility, creating that choice. Would you be interested in it?" And a lot of people say yes, because they see it as an expansive process as opposed to a fixing process. Well, I definitely got stuck early on in my career of coaching with problem fixing. Whereas now I tend to, that's just a byproduct. It's this expansive possibility creation piece that I think where coaching's got real value in particular, right? Same with mentoring as well. So that's kind of 3 and 4 handled. Sorry, 2 and 3 handled. 4 is understanding, is this kind of just a little bit of a niggling problem, or is there a real need to fix this now? And it could be I'm in a certain, I've got a great business, but I'm in a lot of pain around my relationship. And if I don't get it right, I could get a divorce. Okay, there's a great reason to fix that now. But it could be some pain based thing around, I've been trying to create the business I want. And actually, I'm doing okay with my business, but I kind of feel stuck. And it's been frustrating me for months, if not years. And I want to break out of that. Or it could be, I'm doing great in my business, but I know there's so much more and I have so much more potential to unlock. Now I really like those sort of clients. And so actually that aspirational based urgency is really cool. But urgency is very important because what you have to understand is that people's brains fight between, this kind of like this super conscious brain, which is like you're very aware that there's so much more you could create and so much more to bring in a good way, not necessarily in a space of punishment or lack. Fighting the limbic brain just wants to stay where it is. It likes comfort, it likes routine, it likes familiarity. So there's got to be a strong enough reason for the superconscious brain to go, "Right, limbic brain, you need to go and park yourself because I need to do this for me." If they're if they are potentially not the only person making that decision, you need to get the decision maker involved at some point. It might be getting them on the call. It might be you actually have a separate call with the decision maker. Particularly important if you're coaching kids to have the decision maker around. Um, and then the big part for me, part of the urgency, part of the why now, why me pit is just really reflecting back everything they said in the session. So um, I went on a course with a guy called Chris Kenny, Kenney, and he's really cool. He talks about revealing the unseen. I really like that. People come to a call and tell you stuff, but if you're a really good coach, you'll reveal stuff that was below the surface. Reflecting that unseen stuff back to a client is often the best way for them to make a clear decision about what they need right now. Because generally, if they haven't bought something very recently, there's generally some sort of conflict going on about, "I want to do this. Oh yeah, but I should be able to do it by myself. I want to create this new thing. Oh yeah, but it's kind of like safe staying where I am and it kind of works," type thing. There's often a lot of conflict going on. So talking through all of that really helps the sale process. So there's space there. I'm sure you've been making notes as you go along, but there's space there. There's things on here that are starting to click or starting to create some thought, then capture it on that slide, or you got some notes later on in the workbook as well. Okay, this is how I sell. I'm going to give credit to Rich Litvin, who some of you will know watching this video. So I went on a course in London with Rich, just a few hours, and I stood up and asked him the question. I said, "Well, how do you structure your selling process?" Because he wrote a really good book called The Prosperous Coach with Steve Chandler. And I asked Rich, "What do you do?" And so I made my own adaptation of that and use it to this day. So the first thing is I always want to offer my coaching, mentoring service, whatever that is, into possibility, into expansion. I don't want to do this. They're just resolved. They're happy. They're comfortable. I always ask permission to talk about it. So would it be okay if I talked about, what working with me might look like at the end of this webinar? I'll ask permission as well. And if you can always leave, right? Okay, you can always stop the recording then if you go, oh, okay, I don't want to be sold to, right? It's fine, okay. Um, so ask permission first. I've never had someone say no, but I think it's nice to ask. With something that's more intangible, like coaching, I think it's useful to break it down into subsections. So I don't have like a cookie cutter approach to coaching. I don't have like a sausage machine where you go in one end and go through 12 processes, come out the other end. Mine's more intuitive. If you are mentoring or consulting, it's probably a bit more structured to what you're doing. The client wants you to employ you to work on this. So sometimes it's a bit more tangible. But with coaching, it's somewhat more intangible. So I tend to break my coaching down into areas that I work on. And the areas that I work on are vision and mission. What do they want? Why do they want it? Strategy. How are we going to do it? Mindset. How are they thinking about it? Both positive and negative kind of patterns they run. Skill set, they need some skill sets to achieve what they want. That might be through me or it might be through using my network, which is a big selling point for me because I've got a high quality network of people. And then my favorite one is a time and presence measure, which is effective use of time is one level, but actually relationship with time is another level. And then I say one of my measures is the amount of times you're present or the length you're present for and the depth of your presence. That for very highly successful people, this question of time and presence is a very, very powerful factor for them. So I always explain what my subsections are, ask if there are any questions. I then do a piece which is called The Tale of Two Paths. It's in the workbook. It's a LinkedIn article I did, which is genuinely discussing what does a path look like if you go carry on by yourself, try and make it work for yourself, generally more windy path, a bit more of a time investment. Sometimes you'll get there, sometimes you won't. But it's a valid path. So there is a path here which is don't have a coach, don't have a mentor. Okay. And then talk through, well, what does working with a coach look like? What does working with me look like? Okay, should be more direct. I've got experience of working with people in this area. Okay. There's a time investment. There's a much bigger time investment with the first path, by the way. There's a time investment, there's a monetary investment. So you've got to consider these things. And you know what? Some people it might be, well, actually, hold on a minute. I don't think I do need a coach. I think I just need to go away and do some stuff, right? That's cool. Not very often that I don't personally have a coach or mentor now, but yeah, there are times I just like to be a bit more still. I personally then talk about how I choose a coach or a mentor or a guide, because I think it's helpful to give them a framework to assess you as a potential coach or mentor or others, right? So for me, it's like, have they done something similar to what I want to do? So it might be, have they created a business like I want to? Or it could be as, have they gone to the levels of emotional depth that I require? That's quite often comes up in coaching, right? Now then they might have gone there, but are they an effective teacher or guide or coach? So you kind of, well, hopefully from the amount of experience you've given them already, they can make an assessment of that. But some people have like built great businesses, but they can't really teach others how to do it. So I think it's a good question to ask. Very important is an alignment of values. Do we feel like we see the world in a somewhat similar way? Like I won't work with someone that is pushy, transactional, so on and so forth. It's just like it just won't work. It just won't work because I could feel myself not wanting to help them. So is there an alignment of values, personality, principles? I think it needs to be decent alignment for it to work well. I studied NLP, um, loved some of it. Found Dr. Richard Bandler someone I couldn't totally relate to. I could respect him, respect his skill, but part of me was resistant to use some of the stuff because I didn't like how he did it. So as an example of that. The final question is this worth it? Which is, do I think, given what I've brought to the table, that the time and investment, I don't know what it is yet, is that going to be worth it? So this way, you're looking for people who are going to bring sufficiently large things to the table that justifies your in fact, like easily justifies your coaching fee and easily justifies the time they're going to spend with you. So this is often a quality of lead question. Is like, you know what? If you're charging, pick a number, 20 grand for your coaching, right? They've got to have something that's like sizable. So this is why often, if I'm charging 20 grand for my coaching, I'm probably looking for people that are earning north of 100,000 a year because you know what, there's got to be enough traction around the fee where I think actually, even just from a business point of view, I'm easily going to make that fee back, for example. But it could be if someone's a multi-millionaire or a billionaire, they'd pay you 20 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand, whatever, for personal coaching because you know what, you're going to help them to be in a better place and like money can't buy you everything type thing. So yeah, just consider that, right? Number five, I always check for commitment. So normally I don't work with people anyway that aren't committed, but it's just like, do they understand there's significant work to be done between sessions? Do they understand to respect the time and the day of our appointments together? Do they understand that unless it's an emergency, you give 24 hours notice of moving the appointment, and only then if it's absolutely necessary? How are you going to show up for calls? I'm going to come all in. Are you going to come all in? That type of thing. It's just like, you know what? I'm there to hold you to a higher standard. Um, Actually, more accurately, I'm there to help you hold yourself to a higher standard. So I think a commitment discussion is useful. Like, you know what, we're not, particularly people with a lot of money, that can potentially be an issue, right? It's just like they just sometimes there's like it's just not enough money to get them committed. So sometimes actually have to consider you as your fee appropriate enough? Is it going to get them engaged enough? Yeah. And then this is where the packages bit comes back in again. So that slide where I talked about different ways of delivery. Um, there's the simplicity approach, which is you deliberately generate leads for one product in mind. You then talk about the product and you offer that one product. That's the simplicity model. With I'm increasingly going down that way with one-to-one coaching as well by saying, based on what you told me, this is the package I'd recommend. There are other ones if that doesn't feel right, but I'm going more down that model of I think this would be good for you. Traditionally, what I've done is I just pick different time lengths. So it could be 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. If you're fairly early on to coaching, I would generally make your contracts quite short because your prices will be going up. So you don't want to get locked into delivering cheap coaching. I now probably talk a little bit more about sessions because sometimes people want to do things quickly initially and then space it out a bit more, or they just want to think about use of time, or they might be on holiday or something like that. So I might sell 6, 12, 24. Funnily enough, most people go for the middle one. Okay. Increasingly, I probably would now say this slide is somewhat outdated in that I like longer term coaching relationships. So I'll often offer 12, 24, 48 sessions. Up to you, right? And the longer the contract that they lock themselves into, the better value it is per session. I never talk about money per session. People tend to might work out in their head. I focus more on the transformation. So I'm always asking about outcomes. If we did 12 sessions together, what are your outcomes from that 12 sessions? If you're doing 6 sessions, what's your outcome for that? What's going to tell you that that was a worthwhile thing to do? Because then they're more likely to renew and we're more likely to talk about what you've done. Also helps you to keep track on things, right? Once you've told them what the offer is, then you shut up. Silence is golden, right? Don't talk through the decision. Just sit there until they say something because you need this kind of this discussion in their brain about, oh, I'd really like to do this. Okay, that's a lot of money though. Yeah, but what if I stay in the same place for too long? I'm gonna be old and be full of regret and da 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 da. You got to have let them have this internal discussion in their head, and then they'll say something, and then you can coach from there. Okay, in terms of coaching from there, yeah, so some notes. So I left some notes in the workbook because there might be aspects of this that you like, so keep them in, and there might be aspects you want to change, or there might be aspects you want to take out, or you want to add in. So I'll put a notes thing on the next page, probably post watching this video. Just think about what your sales process looks like. Possible outcomes. There's probably more than this, but these are the obvious ones, right? The first one is no. No, it's not going to be for me. It might have been that you haven't quite got the right quality of lead in there, so it's too much money. It might have been that they didn't really sort of vibe with you, for want of a better phrase. Um, the important thing here is your natural tendency when someone says no is to try and get off the call as quickly as possible. And actually, the no is probably your best way of understanding why they've ended up as a no, because that can really help with future calls. And they might say, do you know what, I don't think there's enough structure to your program. And you might go, would I want to put more structure in my program? Maybe, maybe not. Or maybe it's just the wrong client for me. I don't do structure, right? It could be it's a no because, I've spent a load of money on coaching recently and I just don't have any. Okay, well, maybe that should have been filtered for before you got on the call. Anyway, lots of reasons why. You can learn a lot from a no. In fact, you probably learn more from no than any other response, okay? Not yet is a little bit dangerous because we're starting to move a little bit into maybe country. Like, oh, I really like what you do, but yeah, it's not yet for me. I've got to go finish my house renovation, or I'm switching jobs, and it can be up some really good reasons around not yet. You'll know if they're a genuine not yet because if you say, well, okay, well, when would be a good time to talk next? They'll go, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Well, in 3 months' time, I'll know exactly where I'm at. So I'd love to have a call with you then. If they're really keen to booking another call and you can get a date in the diary relatively soon, then you'll know that actually they are genuinely a possible yes. If there's a bit of like flip flopping around, I'll let you know type thing, they're probably saying no, but in a polite way. So just be careful. I count not yets as no's. But if someone's genuinely super keen to get another date in, then it's like, okay, maybe, right? Three is like, I need to talk to my partner about this. Could be domestic partner, could be business partner. Um, so this is really understanding who the decision maker is, and ideally you might have found that out before you actually made the offer. So I often will coach them. Okay, your other partner wasn't on this call, so what are you going to say to them? What are the key points? Which is why I use the structure of vision, mission, strategy, mindset, skill set, time, and presence, so they can talk a bit more about what they're going to get from the program and say it's why they're excited about it. So what are you going to tell your partner about what you're excited about? Okay, what are you going to tell your partner about what reservations you have, right? So you can coach the person through that. Need to then decide when this decision actually going to be made. Does that partner need to come on the call? Do I need to have a separate call with the partner? So it's just making sure that that partner has as much information, relevant information that the person you were just talking to has. It can be a bit tricky, but it's definitely navigable. Okay. I need to think about it is another response. That is interesting because that is exactly what so I always sleep on something. That's my rule, right? If I get excited about something, I always sleep on it. All right. So a coach might get potentially frustrated with me because I'll say, I'm going to sleep on it and I'll let you know tomorrow. That's cool. I always ask them, if you're going to think about it, what do you need to think about? How long do you feel you need? Is further thinking actually going to help you? Because sometimes people are in a process of overthinking, and actually, what they actually need is coaching on the overthinking to enable them to make a clear yes or no now, right? And it's okay if they say no. Um, Ideally, if it's something you think about it, you probably want to be speaking to them ideally in the next week to keep the momentum of the original call going. If not, I would actually kind of redo that call with them having thought about it. Don't ever try and persuade them to buy or justify your offer via email, text, message, whatever. Always do any discussions or conversations or coaching on a call, not via some detached means, because actually it makes it easier for people to stay where they are. And that's not serving them, quite frankly. It doesn't matter about you, it's not serving them. You might have a yes, but there's some buts. If so, just create some time either then or in the near future to talk through the but and talk through the reservations. And then yes, obviously it's great because you got a new client. Sometimes the yes can come too quickly and you can get remorse afterwards. So what I do is someone says yes, I say great, and then I slow them down and go, great, you said yes, okay, this is what happens next. I'm gonna send you my terms and conditions. I'll send you my invoice. When you paid that invoice, and there's different ways you can pay it, we can have our first session. Do you want to book your first session in now? And that will give you a few days to sort out the payment. Are there any questions? So I'm basically what I'm doing is hand holding them through paying and being on the first call, and you'll hopefully any problems that they hadn't verbalized before will then come out. Yeah. So that's how I do it, right? And that's how I deal with all different outcomes. It's all like, again, I'm not focusing on can I get the sale. I'm focusing on what's right for the customer. Yeah, it's a very it was not even a subtle change. It's a massive change. This intention around, and it's difficult, right? So let's talk about that a little bit. So if you I'm working very hard on my business at the moment to create more consistency of leads, more consistency of sales, more consistency of flow of coaching. It's difficult because you know what? Coaching is naturally quite a feast famine business if you're not careful, if you don't pay attention to it. So if you've gone through a bit of famine where you maybe have not had sale for a while, then naturally starts to bubble up like, oh, I really could do with a sale. It'd be really nice, right? And I really encourage you to try and put as much of that to one side as you can, saying, look, if I just trust in my process, add value to people, find the right people, get the right quality of leads, sell in a proper way, it will come good, right? There equally can be the other flip, which is where you just go through a hot period where you're getting lots of sales and it's very easy, and almost you sort of go into little almost like robot mode. It becomes almost too easy and you're just banging through it. So then you just got to slow yourself down and go, look, yeah, just remember it's not about getting another sale. It's not about hitting a record month. It's not about the fact you've got your best ever business. It's none of that. It's how can I best serve the person in front of me? So we're always coming back to that from both extremes, feast and famine. We're coming back to let me be present, let me focus on the client, and even if it's a no, good things will come from that because they'll talk about you to other people. I've had a number of people that were a no, but I've referred people to me down the line. Could be months, could be years down the line. Oh, I used to talk to Rich. He's really good. Yeah, I didn't work with him because it was like circumstances, blah blah blah. And I've had clients come out of that. Just very briefly, just about maybes, right? So maybes are massively dangerous, okay? Because maybes for the client, that's because that's the most important person. The maybes for the client, the potential client, in they think they're sort of engaged with something, but actually, really, what maybe is a drawn out no and a drawn out staying where they are. So, actually, what you've done is, as a potential coach for them, you've actually put them in a place which actually means they're in the worst place when they started. In that, they sort of got this thing in their mind, but they're sort of not committed to it. And what they'll end up doing nearly always, 90 whatever percent of the time, they'll actually stay where they are and go, no, yeah, maybe I should have done that, right? The maybe for you as a coach is massively dangerous because it kind of clogs up your funnel. And I don't really use traditional sales funnels as such for coaching, but it's what your brain starts thinking is, oh, that could still be a yes. So actually, subconsciously slows you down in terms of lead generation and sales process. So it's really dangerous. You actually have to treat maybes as no's, like hard no's. But your job, whether it's on a call or a follow up call, is to help someone get clarity. And actually, I tell them this specifically. My role is by the end of this, you're a clear yes or a clear no, whatever is right for you. No is fine. I've got other clients I can work with, and I'll learn something from your no. Yes would be great. I think you're a phenomenal potential client. I'd really enjoy working with you. And I think we can create some magic together. Maybe is neither of those. So it's rubbish, basically. So I always try and avoid the maybes. The resource in your workbook that points to that Taylor Two Paths article, which was literally, should I do this by myself? Should I use a coach, mentor, whatever? I think that's it. It is it. Cool. Okay. Let me click off that for a bit. Actually, no, I won't. I'll tell a lie. I'm going to flick madly through this and hopefully not freak your eyes out by going back. So I think on this call, there are three key things, right? One of which is what state are you in when you're selling? Like how present are you fundamentally? How well are you listening? How well are you understanding where the client is at? And then reflecting that back to them, and then maybe talking about what you do, because sometimes you won't make an offer to a client because you're definitely not the right person. I think it's really important to consider what you're selling people into and have a lot of clarity and a lot of certainty about that. Be very clear about your pricing. You don't need to justify it. You just the coaching or the mentoring session has done that for you. And then fundamentally, all that stuff I talked to you about sales is make it about the client, make it service based, ask good questions, don't satiate them, move into possibility and creation. Um, and that kind of really is it. And so, in terms of stuff that I do, I did ask permission at the start, so hopefully that I really hope that was valuable and complete for you. But in terms of what I do, so I brought this up again because there's two, well, there's three products really, three main things that I work with. So the first one is when we're just working on you. So that is, let me get another color. Pink. That's this bit. So for some people, you know, maybe you don't want to be a speaker, mentor, or a coach, but maybe you're an executive or maybe you're a business owner doing something different. What I did was I took everything in my head and every video I've done, every blog I've done, I put it into one Facebook group and then I categorized it so it was actually some sense to the pathways you can take. And I called that the Mindset Toolbox. Okay, I'm going to put some links into this in a second, but if you go to richwaterman.com, you'll see about the Mindset Toolbox. It's 400 quid, it's £50 a month. It's got every tool and speech and everything that I've ever done. I think it's potentially useful for people on two levels. One of which is you working on yourself, and then the second level is if you're maybe a coach or a mentor, feel free to go in and use my tools to help someone else. I'd appreciate some credit because most of the tools are very original to me. Some of my adaptation of tools. So it could be useful for you as a toolbox and stuff that you use to help other people as opposed to just yourself. But definitely use it for yourself because actually I go back into the group and use my own tools for myself as well. So obviously I rate them. The second one is a mastermind for speakers, coaches, and mentors, consultants, where we look at all three circles. So we look at you, we look at how you're interacting with the community more from a being perspective. We look at the work that you deliver and how to fine tune that, make it more aligned with you. So you get authenticity, you get alignment, you get flow, you get away from burnout, incongruency, and disconnect. That is a 6 month program. It's a group program. There are elements of one-to-one coaching in there. There are group calls every 2 weeks. There are live experience days, two lots of 2 days with me. There is a course you follow as well, and you can join whenever you want. And it's currently, say currently, because I think it's cheap, but that's okay. It's 3 grand up front or 550 a month for 6 months. And I have people that have stayed in it for months and years, basically. Yeah, so keep rolling on that. If you want to talk about that, I'm going to put a link into my Calendly because I've got to make sure that, first of all, it's right for you. So it's a good thing for you to be in. But also, I have to be very respectful of people that are already in the group and make sure it's a good fit that way as well. And then the final piece is you might want to work on this from a speaker, coach, mentor perspective, one-to-one, or you might want to take elements of this and apply it to your business, or you might want to take elements of this and apply it to your role as an executive. So if you want to talk about one-to-one stuff, then I'll use my Calendly link again. Right, I'll stop there. What I'll do is I'll put richwaterman.com is pretty obvious, but I think it's probably worth. Let me just put it in the chat, richwaterman.com. I'll put the workbook in the chat again, just in case you missed it at the start, is that. If you're looking at a replay, it's all going to be on the website anyway. And if you want to book some time with me to talk about the mastermind or one-to-one, there is there. Thank you very much for your time. How are we doing? 55 minutes. Actually, last week was 55 as well. That's good. Less than an hour. Thanks for staying with me. Thanks for watching. Appreciate that very much. Would definitely appreciate feedback. If there's something that really resonated with you or something you've got questions about, please drop me a message because I like evolving content. And also, Last week I did leads, this week I did sales. If there's an element of the business model that I talked about that you thought, oh, I'd like to know more about that, let me know and I can do some more stuff on that next week. Cool. Great stuff. See you on the next webinar. We pretty much run these every Thursday, so I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye for now.